All right. Welcome back to the YouTube channel, and those that are listening to the podcast, welcome back. Um, we are joined today by a special guest. This is my brother, Kayden Lloyd. I talked about him a little bit in the last episode, um, and I invited him on to kind of give his experience on his life and his fitness and his health now. So, without further ado, I think we're just gonna jump right into this. So, how's things?
Good, man.
Doing
Really
good?
good.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we're gonna kind of go into on this about your life leading up to now.
Okay.
So, um, we're gonna kind of start off with your fitness beforehand. So what just starting off, what got you into lifting, living a healthy lifestyle?
I think it all started, just like you said before in the last episode, just watching mom.
Yeah.
She did all the Weight Watchers and stuff like that, and I think it pushed me and you at the same time to try to like better ourselves. We
Yep.
kind of wanted to. Back in the day, we wanted our biceps to pop.
You bet.
Mm-hmm. So I remember just thinking like, oh, let's give this a shot. And I remember we went and worked out with one of our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Worked out in his little shack out in his backyard, and that just lit a spark. And just seeing the dedication you had and like how good it made you feel. Just starting out, we didn't know anything at the beginning, and so it was nice to like follow somebody. Kind of lit a spark under both of us, and so I think it just took off from there.
You bet.
So, but before that, it was, I don't know, in high school, I didn't really get into it as much as I probably should have. I think I started lifting off and on throughout high school, but then I started lifting super heavy, like working out and stuff. I think it was my senior year, and then after that.
Did you do weights in high school?
Yeah, I did. I did do weights, but I just goofed off.
Okay, yeah,
So
everybody does.
Yeah, it was just a social class for me.
Right.
So me and my friends would just goof off. But then I started taking it serious. I remember me and you would go. We were working at the same job at the time, and so we would go right before work. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. We would get to the gym. We had to be at work at 7. And was it Eagle Mountain? I think we were working at Facebook at the time.
Yep.
So we'd always just super early mornings, but I just remember it was like morning. He would be like, "All right, time to get up," and then in one morning I'd be like, "You didn't want to get up." I'm like, "Come on, dude, we need to go."
Keeping each other accountable.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just went like that, and it kind of got to the point where like we both got up at the same time because we started to see differences in our bodies and started to feel better, not only physically but mentally.
Yep.
Little did I know that being physically active and lifting and being in such good health would benefit me in the future, which I think is a key role because we never know what's going to happen.
Right.
Exactly. Like just the healthier lifestyle you do live can help you in many ways in the future.
Absolutely.
With like physical trials or illnesses and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So with that, right? You were talking about working. You were talking about we obviously got up super early to get to the gym, right? Because that's what we wanted to do.
Yep.
And we had that dedication to get those biceps and to feel better about ourselves, right? Explain a little bit. I kind of talk about on my channel. I kind of talk about being busy and working my job, right?
Yeah.
What do you do? I mean, obviously, I know what you do, but what do you do, and how do you work around your schedule? Like even to this day, like I mean, obviously, it was pretty much the same before, but like, what do you do?
So I kind of had to switch my schedule up recently because I got moved jobs. But we start at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm actually doing the electrical apprenticeship, what he just finished. And so we start at 7 o'clock in the morning up in Park City.
Okay.
So that requires to be up super early, and especially with winter, we have to leave super early. And so it's just early mornings. And so I had to push my schedule forward. And so I wake up at about 3:45, 3:50. And then I get to the gym at about 4:05.
Okay.
And then I can work out. I work out for probably around 50 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
And then I can ride the bike for about 10 minutes. I know it's not a lot, but for me, 10 minutes is 10 minutes.
Oh, for sure.
It's better than
Absolutely
better than nothing. So for me, it's been working super well. And so, yeah, that's kind of like you said. I have to be at work at 7 o'clock, and then by the time I get off at 5:30, and by the time I get home, it's 7:15, and
your night's gone at that point.
And I don't want to go to the gym at 7 o'clock. I want to spend time with my wife.
Absolutely.
And so I have to, move around my schedule. Yeah, I have to go to bed a little earlier, but I'd rather wake up earlier and then spend time with my wife at the end of the night.
For sure. Totally get that. Awesome. So kind of going back a little bit to when you first started, I know I know your story coming up, and I know your story like getting into fitness and getting into lifting and that type of stuff. Where, I guess my question is like where did that take you mentally, right? Like where did that and physically, right? Where like how much did you weigh? And how much muscle do you think you put on just in that little period of time, not knowing very much? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So that was before we knew about like eating, nutrition, and getting the right amount of protein in. They call it beginner gains.
Okay.
So when I started lifting a lot, and I just was eating random stuff. Thought it was high in protein, and thought I was getting enough protein and stuff like that. But it was, I don't know. I just remember being super skinny. Like I would look at pictures of myself, and I'm just like, oh, man, the scrawny kid. I've also heard, like, I remember back in the day, people would make fun of me because I was a skinny kid.
Okay.
I had a skinny neck, and it eats at you more than you think. You tell yourself that it doesn't bother you, but it bothers you.
Yeah.
So I just remember just dedicating myself to the gym. But before I knew much about nutrition and stuff like that, I probably put on 10 to 15 pounds.
Okay.
But they call it, beginner gains. And so like I didn't really know much at first, but it was a start. You know? So it did definitely, like you said, how did it help mentally?
Yeah.
It was nice to actually, forget about everything else in the world. And then that time in the gym was for me.
Yeah.
I was able to just put my headphones in. Sometimes, I'd listen to soft country, classic country just to calm myself.
Yeah. Everybody thinks it's screamo in your ear, but sometimes it's like, Katy Perry
or you got some George Strait.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's just my time to do what I want, to give time for myself, which helped tremendously with my mental health.
Absolutely. Okay. So about what time, or about how many years ago was that, do you think, that you started lifting?
I was probably 18 years old.
Okay.
So I'm 23 right now. So 5 years ago.
5 years. Okay. And obviously we talked a little bit about, in my last episode, I talked a little bit about you getting sick. Yep. You want to kind of expound on that, maybe put in a little bit of a time frame with that and kind of lead into there?
Yeah. So I was, doing the same thing what we talked about before. We were working together. I'm going to the gym at 4 a.m. And then we'd work a 10-hour day, and we'd come home, go to bed at 10 and do it all over again.
Yep.
We did that forever. But I kind of got to the point where I just was beat more than usual.
Yeah.
I'm used to, I'm just a kid, teenager, so I should be able to barely sleep and still have a ton of energy.
Full hormones and lots of energy. Yeah,
exactly. So I'm like, what is going on? I just was so tired. And I just remember thinking, like, what is wrong? I'm not working. I'm not doing anything different. I'm doing the same exact stuff, but I just almost got to the point where I didn't want to go to the gym.
Okay.
Like I almost didn't have energy because I knew I had to work. I had to pay the bills, I had to pay for all my toys.
You bet.
And so I was like, man. So I was like, all right, let's just cut out the gym for a little bit because I just had to work.
Yeah.
And so it got to the point where I couldn't even work.
Okay.
I just was exhausted. And then I started to remember just feeling sick, super fatigued, and tired all the time.
Okay.
And I was confused on what was happening. I was like, what is going on? And then it was one Sunday we were over at mom and dad's house, and I got literally just spat of blood came out of my nose. And I just remember just a stream, solid stream of blood. But it was the summertime, and I usually get bloody noses all the time. It's just dry from transitioning from seasons. And so I was like, all right, whatever, it's just a bloody nose. Well, 30 minutes went by, an hour went by, and it wasn't stopping. It went from one nostril to both nostrils, and so I had just a stream out of both nostrils. And so it was about 2.5 hours went by. My wife because I just got married.
Yep.
April of 2020.
Okay.
So this was in July of 2020, and so my newly wife, whatever, was like, yeah, something's wrong. And so 2.5 hours went by. Mom, I was like, no, we're not going to the ER. Like, I know how expensive that is.
Yep.
I know how expensive. And so it finally got to the point where I was so sick that I like knew I had to go.
Yeah.
And so they took me to the ER. Finally got my nose to stop bleeding, and then they did some blood work while they were there. And they realized that they saw in my lab results that I had 9,000 platelets. So for those of you guys that don't know, platelets are the clotting factor in your blood. So if you get a cut or a bloody nose, if you have a lot of platelets, it can clot your blood and make you stop.
Right.
So your normal range is like 150 to 400,000 platelets in your blood.
150,000 to 400,000.
200, 400. Yeah,
okay.
400,000.
Okay.
So I had 9,000 when they tested me. So they definitely started questioning what was causing my platelets to be so low. Meanwhile, they sent me out of the ER. They gave me a number to a doctor. It was like a blood doctor. And so I started to go see him, and he thought I had, it's called ITP.
Okay.
It's where your body thinks you have an infection, but you really don't. And so it like lowers your platelet count. And so he put me on a prednisone to try to like counteract it, try to get the body back to normal. But meantime, he took like a blood smear, sent it off to a blood specialist. And then I remember getting a call Monday morning. This was like a couple weeks after. I remember getting a call Monday morning, and he just said, hey, I need you to come in for an appointment.
Okay.
So I just figured it was just another blood draw. I know he wanted to check my levels. He didn't say, bring your wife, bring your mom, bring
somebody else.
He just said, come. And I was like, all right, sounds good. Didn't think anything of it. So he pulled me into his office, and he's like, well, we sent your blood off to a blood specialist, and it looks like you have AML leukemia. Talk about a bomb dropped on you.
Yeah. I can imagine.
Just as I got married, like a couple months, like newlywed,
and you were newly in the electrical program, right?
Yeah. So I just got accepted into the program. So like trying to start my career.
Yeah, you bet.
And so it was just a big old bomb just dropped on me. I didn't know much at the time. I had zero knowledge. And so cancer, that's a scary word.
Absolutely, it is.
Like, we've had a cousin that passed away from cancer. And so it's just this very scary topic. And at the same time, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal breast cancer. So it was just a very scary word that just dropped on me.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell me what was going to happen. They didn't tell me how long I was going to be in the hospital. They didn't say anything. They just said I needed to be in the hospital that day. Okay. So I remember just saying goodbye to all my loved ones, not knowing if I was ever going to see them again. Yeah. Like they can't prepare you for those words. Yeah. And so I just remember packing a bag and to me, I thought it was saying my last goodbyes. Yeah. But I knew for a fact that I was going to fight hard and I was going to fight till my ends meet, and I was just going to fight. But yeah, there's always that thing in the back of your head that says, yeah, you're not going to make it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is very scary.
Oh, yeah. I can imagine.
Especially it was during COVID, so I was in there by myself. Yeah. So nobody could come visit.
Not even your wife.
Not even my freaking wife of 3 months could come see me. And so it was very, very hard.
Okay.
But And then I got checked in that Monday. They started chemotherapy that Thursday. And then I was in the hospital for 31 days by myself.
Okay.
And it was just one thing after another, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
So in those 31 days, what we're kind of going more into like the health side of things.
Yeah.
What did you see happen to your body with the chemotherapy, with the cancer,
Yeah.
with all that stuff? What did you see that was the biggest astonishment, I guess you could say, in that 31 days?
So we could backtrack a little bit.
Okay.
When I first started going to the treatment, I remember the doctor saying, "Well, you're very young, and it looks like you're fit.
Yeah.
You have a very healthy lifestyle. Looks like." He's like, "And this will help you in the long run."
Awesome.
He's like, "You're a healthy teenager at the time." Well, I wasn't. I was 20.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're very healthy. He's like,
Yeah.
you look like you're fit and physically active. He's like,
Yeah.
so that is in your favor. So that helped in the first place, getting started early.
Yeah. When you didn't know that 2 years before that, you didn't know that you were literally, I mean, not necessarily preparing yourself for sickness, but you were setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, continue.
And so that helped me out.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things, I think I was right before I got diagnosed, I was sitting at about 185 pounds.
Okay.
I was feeling pretty good about myself. I could hike up and down the mountain, with a big old 50-pound pack on my back and just have no problems.
And everybody that knew you and knew him beforehand knew that you were pretty jacked.
Yeah.
You're pretty big.
And so I was feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
I finally got to the point where I could hit that magical 2 plates number on bench, like I was.
Yeah, you hit it before I did, so.
Yeah, I was feeling pretty good. But I remember getting sick through that 31 days. I remember going home, and after the round of chemo and all that stuff, you get to the point where you just don't want to eat.
Yeah.
But I knew in the back of my head that I had to eat.
Okay.
They told me multiple times that I just needed to eat. So I got to the point where I just had to drink a protein shake.
Yeah.
I couldn't get anything else down, so I just remember there was times I would drink like 5 or 6 protein shakes a day.
Okay.
Just to try to keep that nutrients in my body to fight the disease.
Yeah.
I remember going home after, and I want to say I lost about 45 pounds.
Jeez.
Just in that short time.
Yeah.
So I was at 185, and I was sitting right around like 140, 145.
Wow.
So it literally just drains your body.
Yeah.
But
that's crazy. Okay. So you spent 31 days in the hospital. After the 31 days, you came home, right? And then what was the process of, because at the time were you cancer free after 31 days? Or like what did the process look like afterwards?
So that was they called the induction round of chemotherapy.
Okay.
So at the time they did a lot of labs and tests and stuff, and the only way to cure my cancer would to be a bone marrow transplant.
Okay.
So that's where they take like a donor, and then they take their stem cells and they inject it in mine, and kind of takes over my body, and that gives me like a new blood and stuff like that.
Crazy stuff. So
after that, they wanted to test my siblings, you guys, first, just to see if you guys were a match, which it was like a 25% chance that your siblings are a match.
Yeah.
So they tested you, Sadie, Landon, and Skylar. Yep. And luckily, Skylar, our older brother, met all markers, which was a miracle.
Yeah.
So which he was able to do the donation, but meanwhile, they had to do more tests and get ready for the preparation of doing the transplant. And so at the time, I think I had a small percentage of blasts left, which blasts is your cancer cells in your blood. Okay. So when I first got diagnosed, I had 67%. And then when I went out, I think it was like right around 5, like a really low number. So they were feeling super confident that it was working. So meanwhile, they were able to they sent me home for a while to recover. And then they brought me back in for, I think it was like 4 days. They gave me another round of chemotherapy just to kind of keep it so it didn't act up again. Okay. just to wait until they got everything in line for the transplant. And then October rolled around and they got everything in line for the transplant. And I went in for the bone marrow transplant. And so it was just like before, I got a big old round of chemotherapy. They call it the death chemotherapy because it will kill you if they're not watching you.
Yeah.
So if they're not giving you blood products, it will literally take your counts to zero.
Yeah.
And so that's what they want to do. That way the new bone marrow can take over and start building their own cells. And so they gave me that chemotherapy. And then they injected me with Skylar stem cells. And then it was a waiting game after that. I stayed in the hospital. I think that this time was 28 days.
Okay.
But it was a little further into COVID. And so that I was able to have 2 visitors for like a small amount of time. So that helped out a lot.
Yeah. So your wife was able to come and see.
Yeah, she was able to come. I think it was like the visiting hours for like 2:30 to 7 or something like that. But she was working 2 jobs at the time.
Yeah.
To try and provide for everything.
Yeah.
She's working 2 jobs at the time, so I think she came for like 2 hours a day.
Okay.
Which was better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
But that definitely helped out a lot.
Awesome.
But
cool. Awesome. So going into that, were you so you had all your chemo for the 31 days. You got done with that. You went into the bone marrow transplant, right, with the chemo. So coming out of that, what was like, were you cancer free after that? Like, did it take some time until you were cancer free? Like what was that time period, and what did your life look like at that point?
So after the bone marrow transplant, they call it a 100-day watch.
Okay.
So they want to watch you super close for 100 days.
Okay.
And so I went home, but I think it was they checked my levels 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
So I was able to stay at home, but I'd drive up to the hospital for like 3 days a week just to do like labs and stuff, just to watch my levels. They watch you super close for the 100 days, and after that 100 days, they do like a big bone marrow biopsy.
Okay.
That's where they take like a drill into the back of your hip and test your bone marrow to see like the root of where the cancer is. And so it's right around my 100 days, and they brought me in for my bone marrow biopsy. And I remember getting the results back. They called me back up to the hospital, and they told me that basically they want you to be 100% cancer free at the time.
Bet.
But I was getting more cancer cells.
Okay.
So technically a relapse.
Yeah.
So that again was just more devastating news.
Yeah.
Because after my 100 days, this was January at the time.
Okay.
And I've been fighting this for months on end, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, all right, sweet. I'm going to get back to work. I'm going to get back to lifting. I'm going to get back to everything,
living your life,
living my life. Yep. And then I had a PICC line at the time. And so that 100 days, that's where they normally pull it out.
Yeah.
And so that was stopping me from working out.
Yeah.
And so that 100 days came, I'm like, sweet, they're going to take it out, and I start lifting again.
Yep.
And then I got the news that it was back, and I had to do more chemotherapy.
Okay.
And so that was January, and so they decided to do, I think it was another 4 rounds of chemotherapy after that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Crazy. So they did 4 more rounds of chemotherapy. Then they gave you your clean bill of health.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
So then with that clean bill of health, how long has it been? So from that moment that they deemed you cancer-free to now, how long has that been,
In October this year will be 2 years.
Almost 2 years.
So
wow.
So I got the cancer-free now about 2 years ago in October.
Okay.
So that's when they finally gave me my last round of chemo, did a bone marrow biopsy, and everything was clear.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
So almost 2 years.
No, that's awesome. Heck yeah.
But
so I guess coming off of that cancer-free, when and obviously you wanted to start lifting right away, right? Because I know you, and you wanted to get right into it, right? What did that process look like coming back into becoming who you are now?
Yeah. So it was super hard at the time because I couldn't lift weights for, it was about a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
While I was going through all the treatment because of my PICC line, and I just was super tired.
Yeah.
So I just stuck to just riding the bike,
Okay.
just getting moving.
Yeah.
But after everything was clear and I got my PICC line out, I remember going to the gym. I even took a picture of myself because it was like,
I remember it. Yeah.
I just was super, super skinny.
Yeah.
And it's almost depressing to look at like how I looked before I started treatment and then starting over again.
Yeah.
I almost felt like, because you make all this progress in the gym, and you start feeling really good.
Yeah.
You start lifting a lot of weight, and then it's like starting over again.
Yep.
So I remember taking a picture, and I just was super skinny. It's like how I felt when I was 18 years old.
And that's people's, like, it's especially being in the gym. I mean, that's one of my worst nightmares, is going back to where I started.
Yeah.
Right. And you literally did.
Yeah. No, it's definitely scary to think about, like, but I knew I hated being weak.
Yeah.
Like being 45 pounds lighter, I looked skinny. I was super exhausted climbing up the stairs.
Okay.
And our job's super physically entailed. Like,
Yeah.
we're doing a lot of physical stuff, walking around, running some big stuff. And so I knew with me going back to work that I needed to get back into physical shape.
Yep, absolutely.
I didn't want to be the lazy guy on the job, being like, oh, I can't lift that or I can't do that. And so I knew in my head that I wanted to get back to where I was.
Yeah.
And so it just lit another spark under my butt and just got me going again.
Yeah.
And so I just got back onto the routine of going to the gym every day. It took a while for me to start adding more weight.
Mm-hmm.
I remember re-benching again, and I think I had a 25 on each side. Like, it just was so much to me, and I just was so depressed because, starting over again.
Yeah, where you were way, way heavier before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I knew I needed to take these steps to get back to where I was before.
Yep.
And I kept looking at pictures of how I looked before and how I felt before. I just remember feeling so good. And that's what drove me, to better myself again,
You bet.
I could have just said, screw it, and just been lazy.
Yeah.
Just.
Well, you had all the odds were stacked against you.
Yeah.
And they have been for the last 4 years of your life, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
You had a goal in mind. You had this determination to get back to where you were and then completely blow that physique out of the water.
Yeah.
Right. And again, if I were to show you guys a picture of where you were and where you are now, completely different.
Yeah.
Completely different person. Right. So going along with this, I want to know what you're like. Why do you care about lifting weights and being healthy? What's your why?
I literally, it's not till recently I got asked that question.
Okay.
And I had to take a step back and realize what my why was.
Yeah.
I think I have two whys.
Okay.
My main why is my wife.
Yep.
I want to be there to provide for her. Like, I want to be able to, and my family.
Yep.
I want to be able to raise my kids. I want to be able to go outside and play catch with my boys, I want to be able to take them on trips or hikes and all this stuff. And I just don't want to be unhealthy to where I can't do that stuff. My other why would be just my mental health.
Okay.
While all that was going on, I wasn't able to be physically active, and it put me in a very dark place. Like, it's kind of hard to explain that dark place you're in, but I got to the point where I just almost wanted to just give up.
Yeah.
I just was like, this isn't working. There was so many odds stacked against me where I could have just said, oh, well, I'm done. There was times where I just wanted to throw my hands up and just be done, and I just was like, well, hopefully this does take me because I'm just over this. And it's a very, very dark place, and nobody can get you out of it but yourself.
Absolutely.
So this is great because people need to find their why.
Yeah.
I had to find my why, or else I wouldn't be here today. Yeah. A big thing for me is getting that mental getaway. You've talked about it before, but giving yourself 10 minutes a day. You don't need to do much.
No.
10 minutes a day for yourself.
Right.
If that's reading a book for yourself, or going on a walk for yourself, or doing something that day for yourself.
Yep.
And I had to figure that out for myself.
Yep.
I was living in a super, super dark place. Not only is it physically challenging to go through chemo and cancer, it's a very dark place to go through it mentally, especially by yourself with
I was going to say, and feeling alone.
Very alone.
Yeah.
I got to the point where like I saw everybody progressing. I saw everyone going to school and, getting these job promotions and all this stuff. And I almost felt like I was going backwards. And I wanted to give up. I was done. And I just remember me and my wife had this talk that it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. You need to find your why, or else life's going to suck.
Yep.
Once you find that why, just go for it and keep pushing, And if I got to the point where I'd have to take it seconds by seconds in the day, like I just had to get through that second of the day or that minute of the day, and then things will get better. There is always light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And if you just put your head down and get to work, and just give yourself some time for yourself, dude, I learned so much doing that for myself.
Yeah. I'm a huge proponent. I mean, we've talked about this, but I'm a huge proponent of the number one antidepressant that there is movement of some sort.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I 100% agree.
It doesn't have to be going out and, lifting heavy weight. It doesn't have to be going out and running a marathon.
Yeah.
Right. It can totally be like you were explaining. You can totally be just go for a walk. Right. Or go, whatever. Do something for yourself every single day. It is so important to do that. And we're finding that out, especially at a young age. Like I feel like it's extremely important that we're learning this, because not only can we, take this into our lives, but we can also help our kids, right? And we can help those around us that are also struggling, because there's a ton of people.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people that struggle with these mental challenges where it's, they can't get out of this rut that they're in. And just, if you take it day by day, I mean, you hit it right on the head, right? Like, you're not going to, I'm sure at the very beginning of this you coming back into this physical shape that you're in now.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was days where you're like, it's not even working. Mm-hmm. Like nothing's changing.
Yeah.
Right. And now, 2 years after you had the cancer-free card, right? You were cancer-free 2 years.
Yeah.
You've built, your fitness has come leaps and bounds.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And I mean, now you're like in shape enough that, I mean, you've got some hunts coming up in the fall. Right. And we're going to go out and we're going to freaking,
hike up and down
the mountain, and you're going to be ready for that because you've put yourself into that position.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the number one thing that we need to take from this, right? Is take it day by day.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're struggling, like, I mean, I'm not perfect at it, and I'm sure you don't feel like you're perfect at it, but it's like, if you get in a rut, if you start getting in your head, I know that's what I do, and this is what you do. You go out and do something. You go out and lift some weight, right? Because then, I mean, it's every time I go lift something or I go for a walk, I come back and I feel 100% better.
No, for sure.
So awesome.
Yep.
Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
it was it's quite the story. Yep. I've heard it a few times. I love hearing it over and over. So anyway, thanks for watching and listening. If you're listening, if you haven't looked at any of my other videos or any of my other episodes, go listen to those that kind of explain a little bit of my why and explain kind of the things that I'm doing and why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So thanks again, Kayden, for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we'll talk to you later.